Colorado Springs.
Nearly 500,000 people.
Olympic City, USA.
Garden of the Gods.
Pikes Peak.
It's a growing city.
Our local government has a lot of employees. What exactly do they do?
How does it impact my life?
This is where you find out.
Behind the Springs, an inside look at your local government.
Although each of our podcast episodes are unique, this one is a little different than the rest for sure, because unfortunately, we're saying goodbye during this episode. Not to the podcast. We're going to be here for a while, I hope, but to someone in our city. And before we do say goodbye, we want to look back at quite a career. So it's my pleasure to welcome Chief Ted Collas, our Colorado Springs Fire Department chief, to the show. Chief, thanks for your time.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
We're really excited to have you. And thank you all for watching on Facebook and for listening to the podcast wherever you are on your favorite podcast platform. Chief Collas is retiring next month after 36 years with the department. Wow. Mm-hmm. And while we're sad to see you go, I am excited for our listeners to hear a little bit about your memories and reflections today. So if you can go back for us, way back when, and try to remember, tell us a little bit about how your firefighting career started and how you even got to, start in this business in the first place.
Well, I was probably like a lot of kids. In the fifth grade, I watched during Fire Prevention Week, I watched I guess we'd call them a movie. It used to be, now we'd call them a video, but it was a movie, and it showed a forest fire, and as these firefighters were exiting this forest fire, as corny as it sounds now, one of them stopped and he saw a little fawn, a baby deer laying down, and he scooped it up in his arms and he got it out of the way of the forest fire. And I remember watching that and thinking, I want to do that. I really want to do that. I want to be a firefighter. And of course, at the time I was thinking about being a forest fire or fighting forest fires. And as I grew up, and that was in the fifth grade, like I said, and as I grew up and I started to learn more about the career, my perspective changed, and I thought, no, I want to do it in a city. I want to protect people. And protecting the deer is honorable and it's great, and we do have people that do that, and they do a wonderful job. But I thought my calling would be more to protect people. So that's what I focused on, and was not a good high school student. Did not graduate with, I graduated with a C average, and I tell everybody, and that's in Honolulu Public Schools, and got a C average, and that's because I had enough auto shop, wood shop, and PE to balance out the really important classes that I was supposed to do well at, because I got A's in the things that didn't matter so much.
So you grew up in Hawaii?
I grew up in Hawaii.
Okay.
And so I went to Honolulu Community College, and they had a fire science program, and so I enrolled in that, and I didn't have the grades to get into the university, and I'm so grateful because I got to Honolulu Community College, enrolled in the fire science program, and that really solidified what I wanted to do with my life. So I finished with an associate's degree there, and when I graduated, my family had already moved back to Colorado. This is where we're from. I was born in Pueblo, but moved to Hawaii when I was 2 years old.
Okay.
And so my family had moved back here, and boy, I tried. I came kicking and screaming. There were heel prints in the sand.
I was just going to say,
leaving Hawaii.
That's a hard place to leave.
It is, but it's a very expensive place. And
Yes.
so I had tested for the Honolulu Fire Department as well as Colorado Springs, and I was blessed to really be given both opportunities at the same time back in 1985. But my family was here, and the cost of living here was so much better that I chose to come to Colorado Springs, and it's really been a terrific career and absolutely the right choice for me.
Wow, that's amazing. So people would say, it's great that you started firefighting all those years ago, but the fact that you've stayed with the same department, what is so special about Colorado Springs Fire Department that has made you stay? And obviously there are probably special things about the city, reasons that you've made it your home.
Well, it's home.
Yes.
That you nailed it right there, Jen, that it's home. This was my home. This is the place where my parents were. It's a place where I eventually got married and raised my family. And home means something to me. I wasn't looking for, people ask me if I always had my idea or my focus set on being a fire chief, and I say absolutely not. I still feel like that 23-year-old kid that all I wanted to do was sit on a fire engine and ride backwards and go to alarms and take care of people. That's why I got into this. And there have been a lot of opportunities. I've extended my education since I've been with the city. And with those opportunities, there's a lot of good fortune too. The testing process to promote in the fire service is very competitive, and I feel very blessed and very fortunate to have been successful and be able to advance my career and hopefully contribute at every level that I've been in since I've been with the city.
Have you enjoyed, as you've accumulated some years in the department, seeing those younger firefighters who are just like you, mentoring some of them? I mean, that's got to be a rewarding part as well.
Oh, it is. It is. And watching them mentor each other. And then when I see those folks, like I did several years in our training division when I was the training lieutenant and got to train the new firefighters coming in. And now I look back at it, and that was 15 to 20 years ago. And those folks that came in as brand new firefighters, now I'm seeing them promote through the ranks. And it really gives you a sense of accomplishment. And not only that, it makes me completely confident that we're in great hands moving forward. We've got really good people in our organization that understand the business and understand our mission and why we're here. And they're going to take us into great places in the future.
That's what I was going to mention for folks who are not aware. The next chief is Chief Randy Royal, who's going to come in March 5th. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that your final last day? Okay. And he'll start, and we'll speak with him sometime on the podcast about, his vision for the future. But what do you see as the future for Colorado Springs Fire, and where does it go from here? And is it hard to let it go?
It is kind of hard to let it go because I've done it for so long and I don't know anything else, right? And I was at a retirement just this past weekend. One of our captains retired. And when I was talking to him, I was wearing civilian clothes because it happened on a Saturday, his retirement. And I looked at him in his uniform and I said, man, I have precious few opportunities to put this on anymore. I'll only be able to wear this until March 5th. And that means something to me. But knowing that I've got somebody like Randy Royal that is coming in, and Randy loves this organization. He loves the people in our organization. And you'll notice that when you interview him, that he really has a heart for what we do and a heart for the people that perform the service. He's going to do great things with the Colorado Springs Fire Department. We've always been innovative. We've always been a department that is not comfortable sitting and doing things the way we've always done things. We look for new and unique ways to provide service to our community. I think you've done some interviews with people that have done part of our community and public health, our CARES program, the things that we're doing that reach out into our community to the underserved population and give them a voice that they didn't have otherwise. I'm so proud of the work that those folks are doing. And we're going to continue to do things like that. And you asked one of the things that we haven't accomplished yet that since I've been here that I would love to see, and we're trying to put the ball on a tee for Randy just to knock it into the future, and that is tiered response, where we are, the American Fire Service has done something for many years that we call, when somebody calls 911, we've had a sort of a one-size-fits-all response. We send the big red truck with 4 trained firefighters that do an incredibly professional job when they get there, but they're not always needed. That, what I call our most valuable resource, those 4 firefighters on the fire engine with paramedic capabilities, isn't needed at every medical call. We now do a much better job at screening medical calls, so we know the low acuity or the not serious calls from the high acuity or the life critical calls. And we want to put a dividing line in there, and we want to, tiered response would say, we'll take those low acuity calls, the ones that aren't serious, that aren't life-threatening, and we'll hire different people, a different workforce to be able to respond to the low acuity calls, and we'll save that most valuable resource, those 4 firefighters, paramedic capable on the fire engine, to go to the more critical calls. And if we're able to do that successfully, we'll increase our capacity for growth and in growth. We see how our city is growing. And we'll put more capacity availability for the heavy apparatus, and we'll hire people to do the low acuity calls that are trained and good at what they do, but be able to take we're guessing about 30% of the workload, the alarm workload, away from that most valuable resource. So
That's a lot.
they'll be available more of the time to respond to the more critical incidents. And these other folks that we hire are going to be well trained. They'll know what they're doing, and they'll take care of those low acuity incidents. And if they get someplace and something turns south and somebody is more critical than we anticipated, that most valuable resource is a radio call away, and they'll be right there to render aid.
I mean, that's a huge impact on your response times then.
It'd be a huge impact on our response times. It would change how we respond drastically, and that's what I mean about being innovative. There are a few organizations across the country that have successfully been able to put tiered response into their response model. So you're sending the right resource at the right time to meet the needs of the right emergency. And we are poised to do that. We already do that to some degree with our community response team that takes care of those behavioral health incidents in conjunction with the police department and Aspen Point. We're doing that. We're more surgical. We're sending what the patient needs rather than our one size fits all approach that we've done for too many years.
And you have all done an excellent job, your department, your people, of always identifying those needs and then doing something about it. Because I think there's a lot of fire departments across the country and just, corporations, companies, governments in general that know there's a need but don't act quite quick enough. So that has been a wonderful accomplishment, I would think, and sort of a legacy.
Well, it is, and it's a legacy that didn't begin or end with me. It's going to go on far beyond me, and it started before me. But I think our organization has always been one. I like to say that the fear of failure is the death of innovation, and we're not afraid to fail. We're not afraid to try something new. If we make a mistake, we'll regroup and we will pack up and try again. But there's no condemnation. We don't persecute somebody for trying something innovative, but it not working out. And that gives our people energy, and there's no fear of failure, so they're not afraid to try something new the next time. And pretty soon when we try something new and something sticks, then we become an innovator. And like we've done in community and public health, we've literally had dozens of organizations across this country and really around the world who have looked at the Colorado Springs Fire Department and said, how do you do that? And then they go back to their organization. They don't exactly replicate what we do in most cases, but they customize it, and it gives them the energy and the ability to try something new to meet the needs of their citizens where they are. And we are really proud that we're making that kind of an impact.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's got to feel good that you're inspiring others around the country.
Absolutely.
That's
yeah.
great. So what do you think, looking back? I know I interviewed you once about just your department in general, and you were able to tell me some fun memories. Do you have any funny stories or funny memories? I know most firefighters and all of our public safety folks usually have a few. Do you have any that stand out?
Absolutely. And they're both ends of the spectrum. I've got the funny stories and, just the camaraderie of sitting around a fire station. And I've never laughed harder at work. And what a blessing it is to say that I've never laughed harder than I have around a kitchen table at the fire station with like-minded people who care about their community but love to have fun. But there's also been the serious times too, right? Where you've been placed in places and circumstances that nobody wants to be in, right? It's the typical call that the typical thing that you might hear people talk about, but when somebody hands you a baby that's not breathing, nobody wants to be in your shoes at that moment, but you have a job to do, and you do that job to the very best of your ability, and you try to save a life. And if you can't do that, I want to give peace, comfort to the mom that just handed me her baby, to let her know that we're doing everything that is humanly possible to care for that infant at that time. And so I've been on both ends of the spectrum. And some of the fun things, like you mentioned, was, I think I've mentioned this before, maybe on one of these broadcasts, but I got to start an IV on an elephant up at the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo. Not everybody gets to do that,
No.
And I didn't sign up in the fire service thinking, boy, someday I'm going to start an IV on an elephant.
Not everybody can put that on their resume.
Right, but because of what we do, trying to be those community problem solvers, responding to the need, having the tools and ability to be able to help that. And I don't know the first thing about elephants' anatomy or anything, but we had a very sick elephant up at the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo, and if she had fallen down and it compromises their ability to breathe, and she was in danger. And so they called us, and we had our heavy rescue team there that had airbags and hoists set up to try to get her back on her feet should she fall down. And the veterinarian was trying to start an IV on her, and they had her up against the fence and had her legs tied off, and the veterinarian's trying to start an IV, but the needles that she has wasn't big enough. And she was, and I was just standing in the background watching. And she said, man, I wish I had a 10 gauge, which is a really big needle. And I said, I've got one. In fact, I've got a couple. And she said, really? Why do you have a 10 gauge? Because we don't use those for IVs, but we use them to decompress somebody's chest if they've got if they've had a penetrating wound to their chest or something.
Okay.
And I said, well, if I get them for you, can I try too? And she said, yeah. So I went up to my car.
You're making deals.
I was. Totally.
Oh, that's great.
I was a paramedic supervisor at the time, so I had a little bit more equipment in my truck. I got 2 10 gauges and went down, and she spent for the next 5 minutes showing me where the vein should be and based on where one of the toenails was on this elephant. Again, I don't know the first thing about it, but as soon as she identified the area for me and cleaned it up, she walks away to go to the other foot. I think I was on the back foot. She goes up to the front, and before she even gets there, I said, I got it, and I got the IV.
Oh, that's great. And the elephant was okay.
Well, we were able to administer bags, they looked like pillowcases, bags of fluid into the elephant to help her.
Right.
But again, fun memory. I'll never forget it, but it was just one of those things that you don't expect to ever do as a firefighter. But
every day was different.
Yeah, every day's different.
Yes. Now, even as chief, like you said, you never really envisioned yourself or focused on becoming the chief. But how has that position been for you?
Wonderful.
Has it,
I've been very fortunate to have had a lot of different career choices and different jobs along the way in the fire service, and I've enjoyed every single one of them. And I've got people, probably some of our firefighters that are watching the podcast would say, how could you enjoy Monday through Friday sitting behind a computer at your desk? And I say, I do enjoy it because the mission's still the same, right? The mission to provide for the needs of our community and to support, in my current position, to support the firefighters that are going out there every day and doing that hands-on delivery of service. It is so rewarding. So when I hear about the great work that our firefighters do, I'm not there with them. I'm not shoulder to shoulder with them anymore, and I'm not starting the IVs or taking care of the patients or putting out the fires. But knowing that we in the administration are doing everything that we can to provide them the tools, the equipment, the training to keep them safe and so that they have everything that they need to take care of the needs of our community gives me still a sense of satisfaction. They get the satisfaction of seeing a life changed. I get the satisfaction of knowing that we had a hand in making that possible.
Of supporting them.
You bet.
Yes. And through a pandemic, I might add. So what has that been like? An interesting, end to your career for sure.
Really it is. And, I'm like everybody else in society, right? It was all learning on the go for me, just like it was for everybody else and for our organization. But again, fortunately, we've got an innovative staff. Really early on, before we even had cases in the United States, we put together a pandemic task force. Again, it's that forward thinking of the people on our department that said we need to be prepared, we need to get ready. And so we put together this pandemic task force that has been on the leading edge the whole way. Just a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I was on a conference call with fire chiefs across the country, and they were asking questions about, have you guys done this? Have you done that? Have you made mask wearing mandatory in your fire stations? And I'm thinking back to myself, and I didn't say it out loud, but we've been doing that since April.
Right.
It's because of the people on that pandemic task forse that are so innovative.
Ahead of it.
Staying ahead of it the whole time. And we've had some people get sick, and we're a reflection of society, right? In late October and into November, we've seen across our community the numbers were growing. Same thing with our staff. We saw more firefighters infected at that time. But I'm really grateful to say we've had no very serious disease onset. We've given our people the tools necessary to keep them safe and describe the practices that keep them safe, not only while they're performing their job as firefighters, but also giving them enough of the background information that it keeps them and their families safe as they're interacting in the community.
Right. And that goes back to what you were saying just originally as chief, serving as chief and really supporting your folks, whether it's during regular times or during pandemic times.
Absolutely.
Providing what they need.
And I keep saying this, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, and I don't want to sound like I'm placating or anything, but it's really the people. And sometimes it's just getting out of their way. We've got folks that know what they're doing, that are really good at their jobs, that are passionate, that care. And when you identify that as a leader and you get out of their way and let them
empower them.
Yeah, empower them, remove roadblocks that might be in their way, and let them do what they do best. That is what has made us successful.
What can you say just about, in general, the city of Colorado Springs working at a high level in our local government? And kind of we're at an exciting time in our city. Pandemic aside, we are experiencing a lot of growth, and I think we've got a bright future.
Well, we do, and I think that the economics of what we've been able to accomplish as a city during this pandemic, we're very resilient as a community, with tourism being as down as drastically as it has been in the last year. But for our economy not to have taken the hit that we thought it would, and the influx of building that is coming in and growth that we're experiencing, it says a lot about not only Colorado Springs, and people want to move here because of our beautiful environment, in the shadow of Pikes Peak and all of those kinds of things. But I think that really says something about our city's leadership. Mayor Suthers has done a terrific job. His list of accomplishments, of the things that he has set his eyes on since he's been our mayor, has been really remarkable. What a track record, and that has made our city look very, I think, appealing to a lot of folks across the country. When I walk in your office here and I see the big thing on the board saying we're tied for the first place of most desirable cities by U.S. News and World Report, that's not by accident. That's careful planning. That's a lot of people doing their jobs. And also, you said being at a high level in the city, I get to sit around, and not during COVID, but prior to COVID, we get to sit around a conference table with our other directors, the city directors, talented group of folks, all of them working to increase and better the quality of life for our citizens, and having a passion and an expectation from our mayor, but a passion individually to do their jobs well, and to watch them do that and watch our city grow and really weather this storm quite well. At least so far, we've done a tremendous job. Says a lot for our city, our community, and the people that live here.
And you're right. It's so attractive to folks who are moving here, but for those of us who've been here for many years, just instills that sense of pride and makes you feel grateful.
Right, and we want to tell that story because we don't want our folks to take it for granted. There hasn't been a lot of travel, right, because of COVID, so we're not looking around and seeing necessarily or experiencing how hard some cities have had it because things are going pretty well here at home. But that's definitely not the case all across the country. And so we're really grateful for what we've been able to accomplish as a city, and we're looking forward to great things in our future.
Now, speaking of COVID, I know we can't have a big bash for you here, a big retirement party like we would in normal times. So, I just wanted to ask, I'm sure there's no way for you to list everyone, but are there certain people or things or anything you would want to say thank you to, or things you want to point out, as you start to close in on the final days as fire chief?
Yeah, and thank you for asking that. And I guess it would probably be, it's not overstated when I say everyone. The Colorado Springs Fire Department's been around for 127 years. And that means that there were a lot of people before me that got our organization going in the right direction. And so I'm grateful for all of them. I'm grateful for the legacy that they left behind that I could take up and try to do my part with. I'm grateful for all the people that I've worked with through the years, the last 36 years, and the work that they've done and the work ethic that they've taught me along the way. I think I entered here as a pretty naive 23-year-old, and I've grown in the position, and I've matured along the way. But it's because I've had great mentors along the way, and there's so many of them too numerous to mention, really, and I'd forget somebody, I'd leave them out, and so I don't want to try to list names. But then being in this position, and I have mentioned Mayor Suthers, he's been a great leader. I don't know that I've ever had a better boss who's more trusting, but had the kinds of high expectations that he has. Doesn't micromanage, doesn't look over my shoulder, but he has high expectations. And boy, that's a good place to be as a leader of an organization, to know that my boss expects the best out of me, but he's not going to look over my shoulder and try to do my job for me. He just expects me to do it well. And that's been a great way to end my career. So.
And how many years have you been chief?
It'll be, well, if you include, I was a
deputy
interim chief for a while. I went from deputy chief to interim chief. So if you include the interim time, it'll be right at 5 years.
5. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's gone by fast, but you've been learning and growing even in those final 5 years.
Oh yeah. Since day one, all the way through. Learned things today. Before we got on the air this morning, I was on the phone with the director of El Paso County Public Health, and we're trying something new. Again, innovative. We want to do some new things to get vaccines into the arms of people in our community who don't have the same mobility to be able to go to clinics and things like that. So, problem solving right to the very end. That's really what we do best. And what I've been taught throughout my whole career is find a way to say yes when the answer is yes. Find a way to say yes. Now, some of the folks that work with me will say, one of the things that I'm known for, and I give expectations to all of our new officers, one of them is that no is sometimes an acceptable answer. Mm-hmm. And, no matter where you are in the leadership spectrum, sometimes you need to hear the answer no, but we also need to be able to say no to people in our organizations when we're going the wrong way. But when we're going the right way, find a way to get to yes.
Find a way to make it happen.
You bet.
Yeah. And so what's next for you? We talked a little bit about what's next for the fire department and, your confidence in its future. But what do you do next? Is that too personal?
No, not at all. I've got a wonderful, beautiful wife that I've been married to. This will be our 30th anniversary this year.
Congrats.
And so I get to spend a little bit more quality time with her, and that's really what I'm looking forward to. I started writing a book several years ago, and I'm going to finish that because I haven't touched it in several years since I've been in the administration of our department. I want to do that, and I love to woodwork. And so I'll be doing a lot more woodworking too in the near future.
Yeah, and I've seen some of your work. I'll see if we can get a photo to put up on the website so people can see some of the signs you've made, Colorado signs and other woodwork. That's just beautiful. So that's been your hobby for years.
It's been my hobby. Unfortunately, my oldest son passed away in a traffic accident. And after he passed away on the first anniversary of his passing, my wife and my youngest son and I got together and we said, what can we do to remember David? Because you never want to forget him. And he loved Colorado. He loved this state. He loved the outdoors, the fishing, the hunting, all of that stuff. And so we got together and we made our first Colorado flag. And we put a little sticker on the back of it that has his picture and his story on it. And that's what I love to make. It's therapy for me, really, to be able to be alone in the garage and do something that helps me to remember my son.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I think a lot of people have those signs and have carried on his memory.
Oh, I hope so.
So that's a wonderful thing. And you've got a grandchild as well, right?
I do, yeah.
You're going to spend some time with, I assume.
I will, as much as time as his parents will let me, I think.
Yes, as much as you can
his
spoil
name is
him.
Brady David.
Okay.
And I just love him. First grandbaby, and he's just about 2.5 months old now, approaching 3 months old, and just love being around him, love spending time with him. And my daughter-in-law is going to be going back to work, and so about one day a week, my wife and I will be able to watch Brady and take good care of him and
spoil him rotten a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
That's really fun. Well, thank you for sharing your personal part of your experience as well as your professional, and just for sharing 36 years with the city of Colorado Springs.
You hear this sort of thing often, but until you say the words yourself, you don't realize how much they mean. But it truly has been an honor to serve this community, to be there on the other end of that 911 call. It really is an honor. When somebody is experiencing their worst day and they pick up the phone and they call 911 and they expect experienced professionals to show up and to help them through their toughest day. That's happened, and I've been on the other side of that, where I've been able to show up at their homes. But we've got men and women across this city that do that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And to be a part of that kind of an organization that does such good work for our community truly has been an honor.
Thank you so much.
Hey, you're welcome. Thank you, Jen.
I appreciate having you on. And I hope that this inspires folks to learn more about our fire department. If you're hearing some of these things for the first time, I hope that you'll follow our fire department on social media. They have wonderful things to keep you up to date, some good safety reminders, those type of things are great. So follow fire department, follow City of COS on social media. And just thanks so much for joining us for Behind the Springs, for this episode of Behind the Springs. And we just thank you for your time and for your service, Chief. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.